Hi, everybody. Hi, thanks for coming. My name is Deja Baker. I'm the lead organizer for the Pittsburgh Racial Justice Summit. Thank you to our interpreters, online and in person. Thank you. Thank you to our volunteers and our online and in-person moderators who will be helping us out. Thank you to our panelists and our moderator for each panel. Thank you so much for being here. So this is our 25th year, which is pretty cool. I know it might not look like it, but I've been alive for all of those years. So welcome to our town hall. We have a host of amazing panelists and moderators joining us today for discussion on two panels. One will be about prison reform and the other will be about abolition. What I hope for us today is that we can educate each other through panels sharing our knowledge, as well as through small group discussions in which we have and can interact with each other and the panelists, both online and in person in a more active space. We chose to talk about the prison industrial complex this year because of many injustices we've suffered as a community, and now currently at the Allegheny County Jail, where activists for criminal justice have been steadily involved in advocating for incarcerated persons and the entire system of public safety and policing. Today, we will hear some education about what reform to the system is and what abolition is, and hopefully enlighten each other about what we can do from both perspectives to achieve criminal justice. We know that not one approach is correct. We know that not one person holds all the knowledge. We know that not one experience should be valued over another. We know that not one voice makes a movement. We tell our stories and hope that others will tell theirs. We listen to each other and we fight together. Forums like this are a part of that fight. Welcome to year 25. Now we will hear a few words from our lovely founder of the Pittsburgh Racial Justice Summit and the Black and White Reunion, Tim Stevens. Tim?
Thank you. Thanks. My honor to be with you. Thank you all for being with us. And let's give a hand for Deja Baker, who's been our coordinator the last couple, this year and last. Doing a lot of work, and our great team. That's what we want, team. We have a lot of work to do in this nation and locally. I want to acknowledge Mark Ozark, who was one of the original members of the Black and White Reunion going back 25 years ago. Give him a hand. And his wife, Tris. We are celebrating, as she mentioned, our 25th anniversary of the summit under the Black and White Reunion, which we call a multicultural initiative of the Black and White Reunion. And we started out when back with Mark and Tris and others, my friend Ann Mason and many others, dealing specifically with the police issue. The police issue has been with us forever. It continues, but we also continue to have progress and advocacy. I just had a meeting this week with the acting chief on a proposed bill on stop and frisk that we've been working on for some months. We hope to bring that to a conclusion. Representatives of Alliance for Police Accountability have been on those calls, the NADCP. The Urban League has been on the call, and of course the Black Political Empowerment Project. We're hoping to get that done very soon, because one of the initial stops between the police and the community leads to some of the negative interactions, beatings, shootings, sometimes deaths occur out of police stops and pedestrian stops on the street. We're working on that. Some of you in this room have been with us and we with you the last few months, approaching the Allegheny County Jail Oversight Board on these issues in our Allegheny County Jail, which we view as absolutely unacceptable. Councilwoman over there has been absolutely fabulous on this issue and doesn't quit, and we will not quit. And we appreciate her advocacy and no kiddingness, if I may say, about getting it done right. A couple announcements for you that Mark, as I said, who's been with us from the beginning, has an event he wanted you to know about, Protect the Right to Protest. And many of us in this room have protested, some for many decades, and others will be protesting in the future. But Protect the Right to Protest, it'll be Thursday, December 8th from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Calvary Episcopal Church, 315 Shady Avenue. December 8th, Calvary Episcopal Church, 315 Shady. And on this Saturday at 11, from 11 to 2, at Obama, some of you who are older may think of it as still Peabody, but Obama, 515 North Highland Avenue, Taking Back Our Human Rights, Shaping Black Pittsburgh's Appeal to the World. So that should be an interesting conversation. Justin Hansford, professor of law at Howard University, is a member of the United Nations Permanent Forum of People of African Descent. So he will be speaking. Just FYI, I will not be there because of the funeral of my close musician friend, Leonard Johnson III, who did my albums with me and most of my performances in recent years. Otherwise, I would be with you at that event. The summit, which is January 21st from 9 to 6, and Friday night at 7, we will continue our conversation on how we deal with justice, how we deal with equality. We move far from just the issues of police brutality and police accountability, which we continue to do, but we've branched out where we have normally 30, 35, sometimes more forums or workshops on various subjects. We invite you to participate in helping to conduct or lead workshops on issues of equality and humanity of whatever nature. Civil rights, human rights, the gay rights, the climate, whatever it is we want. We've expanded the agenda dramatically in recent years. So we hope you'll be with us. And what we say about the Martin Luther King, it comes after the Martin Luther King holiday, is it's January. It's an opportunity for each of us in this room and those beyond who are watching through the technology today, that it gives us a chance to reactivate our commitment to justice, whatever that justice may be. And Dr. Martin Luther King was the epitome of that, seeking justice, seeking equality. We have two great forums tonight, and one is led by my friend here. He goes by the doctor, Jamil Bey, founder and president of Urban Kind. I asked him, how do you describe Urban Kind? Because we've been in some meetings over the years. He calls it think and do, a think and do tank. And Bethany Hallam, I thought that was a cool description. Think and do. Sometimes you need to think before you do. Sometimes if you do before you think, you might get in difficulty. It may not be as successful as you want to be. His goal is removing barriers to thriving black families. That's a big topic, removing barriers to thriving, not just surviving, but thriving. There's a big difference. Let's give a hand to Dr. Jamil Bey, who will be facilitating this panel.
Thank you, sir. Tim will set you up with some poetry. But thank you. I said I'm Jamil Bey with the Urban Kind Institute. I am really looking forward to this conversation tonight. It's a complicated conversation because of where we are and who we are, right? This is the United States of America, right? One of the most technologically advanced countries in the world, one of the most wealthy, most powerful countries in the world. and also a country with the highest incarceration rate in the world. Black men, who make up about 6% of the population, make up about 50% of the imprisoned population, okay? And, you know, we use this language and we think about justice. And we get so stuck in this country because we silo everything. And when we silo our justice conversations, right? Talk about environmental justice and criminal justice, political justice. That's bullshit, okay? Justice is justice. And when you have a country rooted and committed to perpetuating injustices and never righting the wrongs of centuries of injustice, this is the result. It is ingrained, it is embedded, it is perpetual, and it's perpetuating. And we can't talk about, you know, so the decisions, and I was talking to Richard earlier today, and the work that he does, and, you know, the poor decisions that so many of these young men are making coming out of this pandemic. And when we think about a time when you're feeling insecure about something and your ability to make good decisions. Think about an 18-year-old right now coming 2.5 years out of being isolated, okay? What's his housing justice? What's his housing security like? His educational security? What's his economic security? How's he feeling about his future? What's he connected to? And then someone says or does something on Facebook or on social media that somehow disrespects him further, and he makes a poor decision, okay? But what have we done as a society to make sure that folks, that young people growing up, have access to secure adulthood? And then we blame them for our lack of commitment to righting the wrongs of centuries of injustice. And now today, we're gonna have a conversation, talk about, now we can't isolate, there's still work that has to be done in housing, in the prisons, in education. We have to find solutions while we're working to change these structures. And so this is a conversation with two perspectives about that I'm looking forward to getting into. So without me talking too much, I'd like to turn, you know, my panel's been working on this stuff, and I'd like to introduce the panel and then kick off a conversation. So we have, to my far left, India Hunter. India is a community organizer, social worker, and public health professional. In the middle, Kyna James, activist and organizer for criminal and racial justice. Nadia Narnor, it's misspelled on your program, Nadia Narnor, organizer for the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration in Western Pennsylvania. So I'm going to turn it over, lead a conversation, start with some broad conversations, then we're going to try to keep it conversational. But for the sake of the interpreters, they're going to say their name every time that they talk so that the folks who are watching online will know who is speaking. So it may seem like a weird kind of a conversation that every time India wants to speak, she says, I'm India, but we'll do it that way. But I'm going to start with you, and anybody that wants to start, say your name first, and then jump on and answer this question or address this. So broadly speaking, how do you define abolition? What do you think it is? Why is it misunderstood? What do people misunderstand about the abolition movement? Please.
Hello, everyone.
Uh-oh.
Okay, can you all hear me? Wonderful. So this is India Hunter speaking. Thank you for having me tonight, and thank you for everyone showing up and everybody that's online. So to answer the question about how do I define abolition, I want to start with how it's defined in the dictionary. So abolition is usually defined as the ending of an institution or a system, and that's very simplistic terms. And I think that that does us injustice when we talk about abolition, because when people hear that, they automatically think of destruction and anarchy and all of the things, and you know, people don't like things being taken away, even if it's a bad thing that's being taken away. And so when I talk about abolition, I really want to talk about being creative and creating new alternative methods that reduce harm and prevent harm to everyone. And so that's pretty much how I define abolition. And then thinking about what's misunderstood is basically that. I think when we talk about abolition, people automatically think what's next, or if we don't have police, if we don't have prisons, what comes next? How can we just have nothing? And I think that's a large misconception when it comes to abolition. It's not about having nothing, it's about redirecting resources and redirecting energy and effort on a community level to actually focus on accountability versus punishment. A lot of times people will conflate consequences with accountability and consequences with punishment, and I think that that does a huge disservice to us all. And so when we think about abolition, the focus really should be on how do we collectively turn punishment into accountability.
Hi, this is Kyna speaking. Just to add on, to me, abolition is, the call that was going to inevitably be made. Our ancestors, you look at, what we know about slavery and how they had to fight so hard just to get free. And then we look at the next generation who had to fight so hard to get the same education as our, counterparts, or, to go to the same schools, to use the same water fountains, to, ride on the same parts of the bus. And now we're at a point where, you see when we are making progress, and I say that in quotation marks, right? Because as soon as we make too much progress, they try to take it away from us. So to me, abolition is inevitable. And, I feel like people have all these questions about abolition, which, rightfully so, right? But we're talking about systemic oppression and how the police itself has been an institution in America for over 320 years, and it hasn't worked for 320 years because it was never meant to work for us. So why keep continuing to fight against a system and trying to make something better that was set to make us fail to begin with? It needs to be started over. It needs to be started over with everyone's input in the country and not just the 1% or the most powerful.
Let's see. Hello. Okay, so this is working. This is Nadia. I would define abolition as a fundamental principle that's goal is to end any form of slavery. Whether that's through systems, institutions, or social practices, these things become important to reanalyze because the norms in our society are often rooted in white supremacy. People often misunderstand and hear abolition and assume we want chaos. But in reality, the chaos that people are imagining are in our communities on a smaller level in which other people can't always see. Certain people have been living in chaos for a long time because our nation doesn't analyze what abolition really means and how it can affect communities. It means that Black people should be able to live a life of freedom and not constant repression. It means every human on earth deserves to have their humanity seen as a right and not a privilege. People in US jails and prisons do not have that right. The criminal legal system was not built to remedy this injustice, but it is working the way it was designed to. Nobody should be enslaved in any way, and that is what abolition means to me.
All right, so with that, Nadia, let's start with you this time. How does that show up in your work? Where is your work focused?
So my work is focused on advocating and supporting people who are sentenced to life without parole in PA. So CADB is the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration, not just because our coalition is made up of family members of loved ones and just friends of loved ones who are incarcerated, but because we're a community that understands that no one should be in a cage and sentenced to die there by officials who decide who you are for you. Prisons are inherently for profit in every way. They're institutions that make deals with private institutions and perpetuate white supremacist ideals about who a person is supposed to be. If we don't match those expectations, our humanity is stripped away from us entirely in jails and prisons, and people suffer. PA has over 5,000 people serving death by incarceration. This makes our state one of the leaders in incarceration in a nation that's leading in incarceration. Now, jails are just nursing homes without the medical help. Jails and prisons have deplorable conditions in which the elderly are sitting in agony, abused and ignored, when in reality, many of these people aren't dangers to the community. If that's not an emergency, I don't know what is. I'm passionate about talking about these people and talking to insiders by correspondence because these voices need to be heard. Not only do correctional facilities perpetuate these injustices, but the courts do as well. Families are suffering because of plea deals, judicial misconduct, felony murder laws in cases decided by officials who have been fired, disbarred, or found as abusive and racially motivated by decisions they made decades ago that don't get to see the light of day. This is wrong, and this is why I do what I do. The trauma this state has put on citizens should be illegal, but it's not, because incarceration is legal slavery in this country.
Kyna, what about you? How does this show up in your work? What is it that you do to work for abolition?
This is Kyna speaking. As far as abolition work goes, for me personally, it's largely focused within our marginalized communities in Allegheny County, as well as within our prison system. You know, I've knocked on not an exaggeration, probably almost, if not all, doors in our marginalized communities in Allegheny County. For one reason or another, you know, I'm the former coalition organizer for the Alliance for Police Accountability. So, you know, whether it was to let them know about ballot initiatives or just the many free resources that many organizations have available that they're not aware of. And, you know, most of the people who are incarcerated in Allegheny County Jail are nonviolent offenders. They're people that need help. You know, people that, you know, may have a problem with drug abuse or may have a mental health problem. And, you know, their idea of helping people is by locking them up in solitary confinement or, you know, having them in prison to begin with, which they shouldn't be. I have been in Allegheny County Jail before, as well as Councilwoman Bethany Hallam. You know, it's not a fun time. It's not great living conditions. It's not a vacation. You're not treated well. And then they just toss you on the street to fend for yourself. You don't go to jail and get out with a plan. You know, they're like jail, the way they describe prison is that it's supposed to rehabilitate you, and it does the exact opposite. Most people come out way worse than they went in. So again, you know, and it's just about the bigger picture. You know, it's you know, poverty breeds crime. When you're over-policing our communities, when people were spending countless amount of months, years in jail, we have people sitting in Allegheny County Jail right now who haven't even gotten a hearing in 3 years. How? And we talk about justice. You know, we look at our elections over the last 4 years, and for us to be in in what is considered one of the most racist states in America, for it to be so blue right now, if that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what does.
Y'all are touching on a lot of stuff outside of the questions in front of me that I need to dig into, but I'll follow up in a minute. India, how about your work? What do you do to fight it, to push this issue?
Yeah, when I was thinking about this question, I was like, how do I define my work? Anybody who knows me knows that I'm involved in so much. But I think, for starters, the start of my abolition work actually started with youth empowerment and advocacy. A lot of people don't look at children or youth as a marginalized group, and they absolutely are. They are one of the most marginalized groups in America. Even if they haven't been through harm, they don't really have a lot of agency. There's always a guardian, supervisor, parent who is required to sign for them and make decisions on their behalf. And then when you layer that with touching the criminal legal system, that also becomes a problem with their agency. And so I've done a lot of work around the school to prison pipeline, the push out phenomena, and also the abuse to prison pipeline, which are terms that I would love to get into another time. I could talk for hours about that. But I think in general, really advocating for our youth, because a lot of times no one advocates for them and nobody advocates for them to have agency. So when it comes to advocacy with them, it's really giving them the space to utilize their voices and talk about their own experiences. And then another focus of abolition that I really focus on is reproductive justice. And so within that, it really looks like advocating for everyone who is incarcerated. People who are incarcerated have higher rates of experiencing sexual violence before they become incarcerated, as well as after they are incarcerated. They're victimized through interactions with other inmates, interactions with correctional workers, and victimized by the system in general. And so, and when I say reproductive justice, a lot of people think about women, particularly Black women, as the phrase and term was coined by Black women, but when we talk about reproductive justice, that's for everyone. And so just some examples of that. A few years ago, there was a story that came out of Tennessee where men who were incarcerated were offered vasectomies in order to get lighter sentences. That is a form of reproductive injustice. It is a form of sexual coercion, and it really limits the agency that people have over their own bodily autonomy. You'll see that numerous ways. I know you all heard about ICE, which is another form of incarceration, and what they did to women who were incarcerated by forced sterilization. These are things that happen every day, have been happening. To Black and brown people, especially Black people, forced sterilization and all the other injustices when it comes to bodily autonomy, from enslavement all the way up to incarceration. And so I'm very, very passionate about that. That's what drives my work. I think at the very basic level, we should all have the right to speak on how our bodies are used, and the incarcerated don't have that opportunity in various ways. So I think that answered the question.
You opened up some more questions, but all right, we'll dig into this. So let me give you a little bit of context for this next question. And it's about, what do we need the public to do? But so when you're opening India, you mentioned, that we can't imagine. It's hard for folks to imagine anything different because we've so committed to this. And I remember I was in New York during the 2010 gubernatorial campaign, and one of the candidates was talking about reducing the prison population, and it was talking about how the state of New York puts almost $50,000 per prisoner, and that's not sustainable. And the backlash was that all of these new prisons they built in upstate New York, you're subsidizing economies. That there are populations there that you've now created work in these rural white communities. And now this new governor candidate's talking about taking that away. And so you have a public that's committed to that. And you think about Huntington, and you think about Greensburg, and you know, all across Pennsylvania with the newer prisons that we have. And that's the economy. So what do we need to do? What's the public narrative, the public conversation that has to change or think about abolition in order to get us moving in that direction? Because we're committed. Racism and this.
So I'll take
Whoever
this.
wants to jump in and say, yes, because this is crazy.
Yeah, so this is India speaking. Yeah, I think you bring up a really great point, and I think what we really need to realize is at the basis of all of these institutions and systems here in America is capitalism, which is inherently racist and inherently built on white supremacy. And so just thinking about that, you really have to put in perspective that when we talk about prisons being the basis of economies, it really speaks to how our bodies are seen as disposable and expendable. It really speaks to dehumanizing folks and using them as numbers and labor. That is something that, again, is ingrained in our country. Before we were even founded as a country, that was something that has always been around. And so I think what the public really needs to do is unlearn all of that, which sounds, oh, sorry. That's my alarm to take my vitamins. But as a country, we really need to, in the public, we really need to unlearn that and really get back to the basis of seeing each other as human. And what that looks like is really understanding that people make mistakes. When we talk about incarceration and when we talk about abolition, a lot of people will speak on, oh, well, what are we supposed to do about crime? What are we supposed to do about bad people as they are labeled? And I think that does a huge disservice in how we view people as human. It dehumanizes them. It puts us in a space where we're talking about who is worthy of compassion and who is not worthy of compassion. And this is seen in multiple institutions. In social work, for those who don't know, it was always founded on the basis of like the deserving poor and the undeserving poor. And so you see that as well when it comes to incarceration. And so what the public really needs to do is we really need to unlearn that basic root, is that everybody is human, everybody is entitled to make mistakes and own their mistakes, and we have to give them an opportunity to do that. And when it comes to the economy, people really need to unlearn capitalism at the end of the day. And it's hard to say that as people who actively participate in capitalism, but that's because that's the system and that's how it's designed. We have to participate in it in order to survive, in order to eat, in order to have shelter, in order to have medical care. That's what we have to do. But I encourage the public to really think creatively of what it looks like to really undo those interworkings between economy, incarceration, and all of the things. So I hope that answered the question. I feel like it's pretty broad, but.
Have anything to add to that?
This is Kyna speaking. So I think, like, as a whole, people were divided into 3 separate groups. I think we're divided into, one, people who are going to take and do anything it takes to, you know, make sure that we're all living in an equal and just world. I think, 2, it's going to be a group of people who never want to see that happen. And 3, people who do want to see it happen but are afraid to stand up for change. Now, I believe, like, as a people, change is always uncomfortable, but it's more uncomfortable to see your people being murdered in the streets on live television. It's more uncomfortable for pregnant women to be hung in 2020. You know, it's more uncomfortable when our trans population is 1% of America and they're dying rapidly. It's more uncomfortable when we're rapidly being erased, and don't think that's the sense of urgency. And you know, the term silence as compliance is very real. Like, you can't say that, you know, you don't believe in the system and not do anything about it.
All right, we're back after a quick break. I hope everybody got some good old snacks. I'm excited to dive into these questions for reform in prison industrial complex. First question of the evening. What are some of the most important needs to reform in the prison system, focusing in on Allegheny County specifically? Anybody wants to jump in, just jump in. I'm Tracy.
I'll start. Can you hear me?
Yeah, who are you?
I can't tell if it's working because my voice just... Okay, this is Bethany.
That's
speaking.
Bethany.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so obviously I have a list. I could spend this whole entire panel like giving the list, but basic points. First of all, the lack of access to health care, including mental health care in the jail. We've had 17 people die in the jail since April 2020. Those were deaths that did not need to happen. Just 6 people this year, all because of medical neglect. Second, I would say we have kids in our jail. We have children as young as 14 years old in the Allegheny County Jail. 14-year-old babies who are in our jail are adult jail. I told Jens I was loud. 14-year-olds in our adult jail, in our Allegheny County Jail. So when you were watching the news and you were hearing about the gross human rights violations in the jail, remember, it's horrible that they're doing this to any person, but they're doing this to babies as well. And I would say last, if I'm just sticking to 3, it's our probation system. So we hear a lot of people talking about cash bail. We hear a lot of people talking about that being the reason for the population in our jail. But our probation system, not just in Allegheny County, in this country, is so predatory. I'll give you an example. The majority of people who are sitting in the Allegheny County Jail are unconvicted. 95% of people in the Allegheny County Jail are not serving a sentence for a crime. Yes, there's some people awaiting trial. Yes, there's some people who cannot afford bond. But even more than that are people who are sitting on what's called a probation detainer. So let's say you get arrested for stealing a loaf of bread from Giant Eagle. And that's something that you wouldn't get any jail time for. Maybe you get some probation, some community service. Now, while you're on that probation, you get caught stealing some eggs from Giant Eagle. Now, because you were on probation, even though that retail theft conviction would not land you any jail time, you're now sitting in jail on a probation detainer, which means all the money in the world cannot get you out of jail. In Allegheny County, we have some of the longest probation periods after a period of incarceration in the entire country. Pennsylvania has the longest in the entire country. People serving their time, serving their debt to society, and then being imprisoned under the probation system for years and years and years to come. Something that happens to a person on probation that wouldn't land you or I in jail or further involved in the criminal legal system. If you're on probation, you miss a meeting with your PO because your car breaks down. You show up positive on a drug test for marijuana. Those are things that are going to land you right back in jail that wouldn't have any effect on you and I. So that's my 3.
Thank you, Bethany. Very informative. Anybody else like to tackle that first question? What are some of the most pressing needs to reform in the prison system in Allegheny County? Love to hear some other voices.
You know, one of the things...
Mr. Garland, Richard Garland.
Oh, this is Richard. What Bethany alluded to... Am I on? Yeah. What Bethany alluded to was the probation. You know, like say they got arrested for retail theft and they got probation, maybe they got 5 years probation, and they violate probation, they could get a 5 to 10 years and end up in the state penitentiary. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people don't know that. I know one of the reasons why I started Reimagine Reentry was because I believe in second chances. And I think that people who are incarcerated, some of them have been my greatest teachers. And it's really important when we say second chances, and I think that I can help change the face of recidivism with opportunities. You know, I think opportunities is the most important thing when we talk about poverty, when we talk about all the different isms that we face in society. And and I think that's really important.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody else want to? Ms. Zinna Scott.
I'm Zinna Scott.
Zinna, I'm sorry.
I think that Bethany hit so many of the issues that are going on in our prison system, especially with our young people. The lack of education, of understanding why and how they can go to prison. We talked about Bill Clinton years ago being a great president, but he started the 3 strikes and out. Yep. And until those 3 strikes and out are done away with, our young black kids, our black and brown kids are going to go to prison and be there forever because they don't understand how the system works. Just as you explained, and you explained just petty theft that would not get you any time. If they get caught doing something else, that becomes strike 2. And people don't understand that. Our young people don't understand that. Education on what causes them to go to prison, and education on how to stay out of it. And the fact that there's no money there in the family to get them the right lawyers to get them out. So they do a petty crime, and they end up in prison forever.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Brittany speaking. I had the pleasure of interviewing Ms. Scott, actually, for a different story, so I just want to say I'm very honored to be on the same panel as her. I've interviewed everybody on this panel for some story or another. I'm coming as a journalist, so my job is to tell the stories of other people, which is complicated, and I think some of the reform that we need is actually in media. I think that the way that we shape, like how media frames crime needs to change. If you Google the name Todd Robinson and you see the stories that came out on broadcast news about what happened here in Wilkinsburg when he was shot by police versus the story that we took months to investigate and found out that he was pulled over for a parking ticket and then shot by police in Wilkinsburg are 2 very, very different stories about the same man. His trial is in December. If anybody wants to learn more about that, come and talk to me. But I do think media is part of it. The other thing I wanted to point out is that we have passed some reform in Allegheny County. We've passed the first solitary ban of its kind in this country, and it is not being implemented by our county government. Voters said we don't want to do this anymore, and because the way that our county government is run by our county executive, that is not being enforced. So that is, there are some things that we are doing as a county. Voters are saying, hey, we want to change this, this is not okay, and then it's not being implemented. And we have some serious oversight issues with our jail and with our county government here in Allegheny County, and I don't know what the solutions are. I just shout things from the rooftops and hope that things change. The other major point for me, as someone who's been tracking the 17 deaths in the jail since April of 2020, is transparency. And I don't know if people know this, but Allegheny County and Philadelphia County are the only 2 counties in Pennsylvania where autopsies are not public record. So if someone dies in custody and they don't have next of kin, nobody can ask for their record. And so we have men who have died in the Allegheny County Jail who were indigent, who were homeless, who don't have next of kin to ask for their records. So we have no idea what happened to them. And that's fine, that's legal. So I filed RTK requests for those records. They were granted to me by the Office of Open Records, and then the county took me to common pleas court. And I was denied those records, so I appealed those to Commonwealth Court. So we are still fighting. No matter what happens, we're probably going to appeal it again. But so there are a lot of things records-wise that, as a journalist, I think we need transparency. Our jail routinely denies the family members of men who have died in the jail their medical records. which is against their own policy. It's against Pennsylvania Department of Corrections policy. And I, again, publish it, shout it from the rooftops, and nothing changes. The jail has routinely informed family members of people who have died in the jail that you need a subpoena for these records. So if you are a family member who cannot afford to hire a lawyer, you can't find out what happened to your son or daughter or husband in the jail. But what happens when we do get those records is that we find that brain surgery was performed on Cody Still without his parents' permission, that Vinkley Harris was taken off of life support without his family's permission in our local jail. Our medical director made those decisions, and we have copies and records of those things happening. So India was talking about body autonomy. We have a jail that is overreaching the medical rights of prisoners and then routinely denies the records to the public and also the family. So those are my big points, is just giving us the information, just like bare bone minimum. Can we have the records, please?
Oh my goodness, that is a huge apple. And even if we take small bites and chew, we still got a lot to eat. Wow, thank you all. I'm kind of shook. So here's the next question. This is kind of a two-parter. As a lawmaker, what plans do you have to introduce or sign into legislation that will improve police community and our police community relationships in our city and our county?
Oh, me.
Yeah, that's the lawmaker.
I'm not gonna lie, I've been doing this for 2.5 years now. It is still hard to like remember that I get to make laws now to protect my neighbors. That's like the coolest part about it.
We all looked at you at the same time.
I was like, why are they looking at me? Okay, I definitely have more for part 2, but for part 1, one of the things that we have been able to accomplish is we did institute a county-wide independent police review board, of which Richard Garland is one of our founding members of that board. And that's something that we're really proud of. And we're really proud that I think we really picked a great team to go on that board. Folks may be familiar with the city's police review board. And so we tried to model ours off of that while making it suck less. And so that was kind of, I liked how India talked about harm reduction, because that's what I practice in every day of my life, is harm reduction. So our countywide police review board is not great. I can't even say yet that it's better than the cities, because I don't know that yet. It hasn't been put into practice yet. And we wanted to do so much more than what ended up in the final bill. But unfortunately, they say that that's part of legislating that I refuse to accept. So I'm hoping we try this out, we figure out what works and what doesn't, and then we legislate further to protect it. But regarding other legislation around people and police relationships, Allegheny County is unique. We have 109 police forces in Allegheny County alone. So yeah, we have the county police, we have the county sheriffs, yeah, we have the city police, but then there's 106 police forces all in our county outside of those 3. And so that brings its own unique challenges when it comes to policies being different from police force to police force, oversight or lack of oversight being different from police force to police force. So even creating a countywide independent police review board, the only ones we can mandate to be under it are the county police. If you know the county police, we're talking like warrants, airports, parks, right? We need opt-in, buy-in from those 100 and, well, the city has its own, 107 other police forces. And that comes down to the local elected officials. So, we're never going to get political here, but everybody was looking at these elections this year. 2023, pay attention, especially in the primary, because in a lot of our communities, our races are decided in the primaries. If you wait till November, you didn't have a say in who represents you. And those local elected officials, not just your city council and your county council, your local school board, are they putting police in your schools? Your local board of commissioners, borough council, what kind of oversight do they have over their police force? Are they voting for them to opt in to the county's police review board because we have more resources to do that than they do? Pay attention, because there's a lot on your ballot regarding that.
Thank you, Bethany.
Is it jail too? Are we talking prison industrial complex?
Yeah, you want to do it that way? I want to do everybody to take that first question. We're going to come back and loop around and get the second half of it. Is that all right? All right. Anybody else? Lawmakers? As a lawmaker, what plans do you have to introduce or sign into legislation that would improve police-community relationships in our city and county? Go, Richard.
First, I mean, they have to be in the community. They have to be in the community. I would love to see them walk the community.
Yes.
Don't nobody walk the community anymore when we talk about community policing. I would like to even have them, that they had them little stations.
Satellite stations, I remember.
Yeah, they used to have them. And kids used to be more open talking to them because they would see them as human beings and not as, a threat. Get him on the mic. No. But I would like to see them more. I would like to see them more engaged in community affairs when they have outside, if they have little picnics outside and kids get to know who the police officer is, to see that they're human. Well, hopefully that they're human. And I don't think these police officers know the kids, know the people in their community when they just sit in the car or riding through the community.
No,
they have to get out and they have to engage with everybody.
Agreed. Anyone, ladies?
Go ahead.
I'm not a lawmaker, but again, with documents, because I'm a dork, I think it's really powerful that in the age of Twitter, in the age of the internet, in the age of I teach at Pitt, so like this generation coming up is engaged in a way that I was not engaged until I got older, is filing right to knows and filing Freedom of Information Acts stuff. And again, that transparency and making sure the Office of Open Records is doing what it's supposed to be doing, making autopsies public. HIPAA is an excuse that our Jail Oversight Board uses for pretty much anything. It's a magical word that I guess means no, and challenging that. And I don't know like what lawmakers could do, but like making our state more transparent would be really nice.
Great.
If I were a lawmaker, there would be I'm Zinna. If I were a lawmaker, there would be a lot of things I'd like to change. One, how we approach people when we interact with them, police to people. Two, the expression and explaining better how and what can happen to a person before they throw them in a car and take them to jail, to allow them to have someone else with them, especially our young people. Our young people are so unaware of their rights and they just do them like they want to. Richard, it would be nice if we did have the police walking the beats again like we did in years ago. But we got to get back up to manpower before we can afford to take them out of the car. And that's something that has to happen, and it needs to happen as quick as possible. We don't have enough officers. I know here in Homewood, we're down 25 officers. So again, when you see them, a lot of times they have a bad attitude. They've worked 12, 14 hours in a day's time, which is too much to put on anybody, whether it's a police officer or a nurse. But improvements, I'm not a lawmaker, I can't make them, but I can say that we need to watch who we do elect. Definitely agree with that. Primaries are a major thing. Know who you're voting for. Teach our children what their rights are. Sit down and talk to your children. I know as a grandparent, I have children that drive. And I've sat down with all my kids, my grandkids, as I did with my own children. and many of you all in this room know that I'm Fred Brown's mother. So you know what's happened. The thing of it is, you teach them that you're going through multiple areas, as you pointed out, and the laws and the way they approach our youth in those multiple areas are different. And you have to teach your children to be aware of it. So since I'm not a lawmaker and I can't change the laws, I have to teach the children what the laws are.
Very good. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to switch that up, and I'm going to say, instead of police-community relationships, I'm going to say prison-industrial complex. If you were a lawmaker, what would you introduce or sign as legislation to improve prison-industrial complex situation?
So for me, prisons there's no rehabilitation. When they say rehabilitation, that does not exist in this prison system. I think that there needs to be more programming in the prisons to help somebody, if they was a drug addict, if they didn't have a job, they didn't have their high school diploma, to have more programs for men and women to better themselves while they're in those places. That's what rehabilitation is, to me, is about. We can't, it's about, right now, it's just about punishing everybody. We have young people, like Bethany just said, 14 years old, committing a crime, and it has messed them up for their whole life. And in the prison industrial system, they're not doing anything to raise that person's level of intelligence or, whatever things he or she desired that they want to be. This system has shut them down, that you can never be what you dream that you can be, you could be, because of the things that you was arrested for. So I want to instill hope and change in folks that's in prison. That they're not there to be punished, but we can try to lift them up, and then we can almost do away with prisons if that happens. That's the way I feel.
One of the biggest things is get them their education. This is Zinna, and getting them educated. If they, especially our young people, many of them have gone into prison and they don't have their high school diploma.
Right.
Get them their high school diploma. Have classes for them. Teach them a job. Teach them a career, so when they come out, the career isn't on how to steal better. The career is on how to go to work and lay brick, how to go to work and possibly become an educator, how to go to work and be a nurse. There's things that we should be teaching. They should come out with education of some type where they can go and make a decent living. The other thing, that when you come out of prison, you never quit serving the crime. That never goes away. There's so many places where you can't get a job because you have been in prison. They tell you that this is the time that you have to spend for the crime that you did. But that's not true. That's very untrue. You never quit serving it. You can't get jobs. We had to fight for people to get driver's license back. You can't vote for so many years. There's things that you can't do for so long or ever after you've gone to prison.
This is Brittany speaking. Again, I'm not a lawmaker. I'm just saying that because I'm a journalist, so don't get that confused. But for 6 months, I've been investigating the incompetency mechanism in our court system with Spotlight PA. And incompetency happens when you have a severe mental illness and you get charged with a crime and you don't understand the charges being brought against you, and you can't participate in your own defense. So we are charging folks who do not understand what is happening to them with misdemeanors like simple assault or terroristic threats, and they are sitting in jail, and they cannot go to trial until they are sent to one of two mental health institutions in the state, which is Norristown or Torrance. Those places are so backed up that people are waiting in jail for a very long time just to be restored, and then they're sent back to the jail in order to face a trial for something silly, really, and then they get time served. That is a state law called the Mental Health Procedures Act, which has not changed in 50 years. 50. So double my age. No, I'm just kidding, I'm 32. But like, I wish it was double my age. But I have interviewed magistrates, public defenders, doctors, all over the state and all over this country who are just saying it doesn't work. This isn't working. And we'll publish that story soon. But if there was something that I've been working on that is definitely statute related, it would be the Mental Health Procedures Act, and how it's impacting and jailing our mentally ill.
I have a bunch of things for this, but okay, the things that we have done so far that I'm most proud of. Oh, this is Bethany. When the pandemic started, remember that the folks who were incarcerated in the Allegheny County Jail, even if they are one of the nearly 300 incarcerated individuals who have jobs in the jail, they don't make a penny per hour. Not one single penny. So when it comes to their books, their commissary accounts, the way that they make phone calls, the way that they purchase enough food so that their stomach isn't hurting when they go to bed at night, the way they purchase basic hygiene products, they're not able to earn an income to pay for those products. It falls on the backs of their loved ones at home. And so one of the first things we did when the pandemic hit was I passed a resolution that we put $100 on the commissary accounts of every single person in the Allegheny County Jail. Every single person. And it's something that I'm most proud of because I was able to not just help the folks who are in the jail, but also their families at home. So whatever people want to say negative about the people in jail, their families, their loved ones, they don't deserve to have to make the choice between, am I going to put food on the table at home or am I going to put money on my loved one's books? That shouldn't be a decision that they have to make. Especially around the same time, tablets were introduced in the jail. So it seems great. You have what looks like text messaging and FaceTime now access for incarcerated individuals, but they charge a fortune. It's a racket. The way that if you buy a bag of Doritos on commissary, it costs you almost $2. You could buy that same bag on the street for 50 cents, those little tiny bags. For a bar of soap, it's $6. $6 for soap in the jail. So that $100 really made an impact. And I was literally at the jail yesterday, day before, talking to people in there, and they're like, our money hit the books on the 1st of the month this month because we had been on them because they were taking forever to get that on. So that's one of the big things. Another one is that we actually were able to stop a really harmful con artist, from coming into the jail. This man had already entered into a contract with the county to provide shotguns and rubber bullets to the officers in the jail to use against our incarcerated individuals. Shotguns and projectiles, beanbag rounds, shot at people who are defenseless. And so we had to get creative with it. And I knew that only the county executive, who was an evil, evil man, but I knew that only the county executive was able to affect contracts. And so what we did as a workaround, because that's what I always have to do, find a workaround to make it work. And so what we did was we passed a resolution to stop the weapons from being brought into the jail. So, okay, I can't tell you that you have to terminate this contract, but what I will tell you is if you pay it, you're paying a ton of money for something that you are never going to be allowed to bring into the walls of the jail. So those are two of the things that I'd say have already happened, but looking forward to, if I am a lawmaker, next week, what am I hoping to do? A big thing for me is DA public defender funding parity. Right now, by law, we have pay parity for the DAs and the PDs. So if you're a starting DA, starting public defender, you start at the same level. But the problem is that in our county and in most jurisdictions, we are spending so much more money on the prosecution than we're spending on the constitutionally guaranteed defense. And that's not right. The district attorney's office has more staff, has higher paid staff. They have better representation. They have 24-hour on-call district attorneys for arraignments. They have, caseworkers and social workers and investigators, all things that with equal funding for the public defender's office that the DAs have, we could have that for the folks who are defendants as well. People who are accused of crimes should have just as many rights as the people who were the victims of crimes. And so I think that equal funding for the PDs and DAs is a very, very big step in reforming the prison industrial complex, the criminal legal system. And the last thing that I will say that we are in the process of trying to do now, I just had some really hopeful phone calls today that's making me think that maybe this is coming sooner rather than later, is I mentioned earlier how incarcerated individuals, they don't make a penny per hour. They're working 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, preparing food, serving food, washing the clothes and the linens of the people who are incarcerated there. They're doing the laundry. They're cleaning the pods. When I was there yesterday, they were fixing an outlet on the ground, basic maintenance activities. Things that we either should be giving good union jobs, county employee jobs, or we should be paying our incarcerated workers. That is modern day slavery. It was mentioned a lot on the abolition panel. That is slavery. What else do you call that? Forcing people, unconvicted people, to work for $0 an hour. So a few months ago, we passed a resolution saying that we were going to start investigating, looking into the logistics of paying incarcerated people. I found out how much it would cost. We found out how we would clock in and clock out, how we would keep track of hours. And the best part of it, aside from the fact that we should value all workers, is that there's already a Pennsylvania law in place that says that the first third of any dollar that is earned by any incarcerated individual in Pennsylvania goes to the victims, goes to restitution, goes towards paying the people who were harmed, who are likely never going to get that money back. You know how hard it is to pay fines or restitution when you're just trying to keep up and pay your bills, pay your car payment, pay your rent, put food on the table? The last thing on your list is restitution and fines and fees. You're paying just whatever you have to pay to not get a warrant. And so 1/3 of every dollar made will go towards that, so that when they get out of jail, when they have that opportunity to get their life back on track and try to gain everything that they've lost while they were in the Allegheny County Jail, hopefully they'll have a couple bucks in their pocket and they'll have one less thing to worry about, and that's paying back their debt to the system that should have never assessed it in the first place.
We're going to move on to our next question. I thank all of my panelists. Those were excellent, excellent answers. How would a better mental health or health care system impact reforming the prison industrial complex?
Less people going to start with. Because if we had a mental health program that went out on a lot of the police calls, they wouldn't go to jail. They wouldn't go. They would be sent to a facility that could help them, because so many of the calls are mental health calls. And because our police officers aren't trained for mental health, they end up going to jail. And once there, it's as you put it, it's a one-way street. It's something that we've talked about for years, but it hasn't become a part of our system, and it needs to be.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
This is Brittany. we sent out a survey to all jails in the state of Pennsylvania this year, and 20 responded, including the Allegheny County Jail. The majority of those jails said that they have become a, quote, dumping ground for the people with mental illness. Wardens said, we're a de facto social worker. We don't have the staff. We don't have the training to do this. Allegheny County said, we're doing really good. But not to editorialize anything, but I think there's that part. So we all can agree that we're putting people in this place because there is nowhere else to send them. We closed the mental health, we closed the mental institutions in this state in the early aughts. We have a handful left, so there's nowhere to send them. Police officers that we interviewed said, look, I don't want to take this person to jail, but I don't know where else to take them. When I get a mental health call, what am I supposed to do? So there's this sort of hot potato situation that's happening in Pennsylvania where we are criminalizing mental health, but we're not really offering an alternative to folks who are off their meds, folks who are struggling with substance use disorder. In Florida, there's a lot of really interesting reform happening, and also in Philly, actually. Philly's doing pretty well because they have a court order and they have to. But some of the experts that I interviewed said that communal health treatment centers that are tracking these folks. So if Brittany Hailer has a serious mental illness and I go off my meds, the outpatient place in my neighborhood knows that. And so if I go missing and the police pick me up, they know, oh, Brittany goes to the communal health center. We're going to take her there to her workers, to her people that take care of her, instead of down to the ACJ. So those are some solutions that experts are saying that are working in Florida. In Philly, if you have a misdemeanor, you don't get sent to Norristown. They're trying to avoid criminalizing petty crimes. That's not quite happening in Allegheny yet. So those are some of the solutions that I know about.
Thank you, thank you. Anyone else?
I mean, I'll always add something. So, I mean, I think this is, I can't tell if this is like outside of jail or inside of jail, but like I'll talk about what's going on in like what we could do if we had healthcare in the Allegheny County Jail. So a lot of people forget that incarcerated individuals in this country are one of the only groups of people who are constitutionally guaranteed a right to healthcare. It's not like a jail can decide, do we want to give them healthcare or not? They have a constitutional guarantee that they will be provided healthcare. People who are in jails and prisons should have the same access to healthcare, if not better, as the people on the streets, because we are responsible for providing it. It's socialized healthcare, and it's guaranteed to our incarcerated population. The problem is that, you know, we mentioned 17 people have died, and I want you to like keep that in your head. 17 people have died in our Allegheny County Jail in 2.5 years. We have one of the highest per capita death rates in the entire nation. Here, right down the street in our backyard. Those 17 people that died, one was COVID. One, they claim was a suicide. I don't buy it, but they claim it. The other 15 deaths were from what the jail calls natural causes. Natural causes?
We do have one undetermined. Sorry.
Correct. One undetermined. You're right. Which we often have undetermined for a year, 2 years, waiting for an outcome.
And the family is filing a civil suit claiming that it was a suicide on the psych ward, so yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So why is that? Why is that 15 people in the past 2.5 years have died from natural causes? A 26-year-old boy died from natural causes after he rang his buzzer and complained straight for 3 days that he had excruciating pain in his legs. They ignored him until one day he hit the buzzer, they opened the cell door, and he fell dead on the floor of the pod from a blood clot that traveled from his legs to his lungs and killed him. You call that a natural cause? If we had access to actual health care in our jail, so much could be different. And I'm not even getting into mental health care and the trauma that the incarcerated people go through, not just before they end up in jail, but while they're in the walls of our jail, while they're in our care. I'm on the jail oversight board. It is my statutory mandate to take care of those people in that jail. Burns me up inside every time I hear another person died when the warden sends me a copy and pasted death notification that someone died in the jail, because he just had to write me one a month ago when the last person died. Access to health care in the jail would change the game. Because then, while we're fighting all these fights about how to make the treatment of incarcerated people better, we wouldn't have to keep being interrupted with another person dying and having to fight that battle, having to solve that crisis, having to talk to their loved ones who are heartbroken, who are showing up month after month, board meeting after board meeting, begging for answers. If we could stop that, we could focus on making sure that they're not going to bed hungry. We did a survey, right? Jens did a survey, but we on the jail board did a survey of the incarcerated individuals. We did it last fall, and we just got our results a couple months ago. And you know what we found out their number one complaint was? Yeah, they're starving. They're going to bed starving every single night. But they're waiting weeks, sometimes months, to see a doctor, to see a therapist. This is people who maybe watched their neighbor that they've served with for the past year die on the floor in front of them, and they can't see a therapist. They might come in on 10 different psych meds, and the jail decides, you know what? We give these 3 to everyone. Don't worry about what your doctor said. These are the ones that we approve in here. It's a mess. But it could be fixed. It could be fixed with the right people in the positions to make those decisions. So right now we're doing harm reduction, but it doesn't have to be this way. Do not let anybody tell you that it does.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
thank
this
you.
is Brittany. Can I add 2 more things? Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry. Especially with jail deaths, which has been what I've been living and breathing for 2 years. I've interviewed a dozen families in their living rooms, and what over half, no, maybe 6 or 7 men died within the first few hours of entering the jail. Back in 2017 or 2018, we had the highest suicide rate of any county jail in the country. And we were audited back then. And when we were audited, the NCCHC, which I can't remember what actually it's, they said, you're understaffed. You're really understaffed, and you need more staff in your intake department. That was when we were housing 2,000 people a day. We are now housing 1,400 people a day, and our death rate has increased. Wow. And our staffing has decreased. And they are dying in intake or on the psych unit. So that tells you a lot, I think, about of who is dying in the jail. We've had maybe 3 violent offenders die. Everyone else, Daniel Pastrick owed a $600 fine to his magistrate. Vinkley Harris, who was taken off of life support, stole a pack of cigarettes. Cody Still, who the jail performed brain surgery on, I think was a petty theft charge. He was a substance use disorder person. I mean, these charges are, not that anybody deserves to die, but who are we jailing again? At a time, do we need to be jailing them, and we're understaffed, and they are not surviving their incarceration.
Thank you. We are winding down. I could talk to you guys all day long. I have so many questions. We're going to do one more question. We're going to do this with rapid fire. If you were to advocate for reform, and you were trying to hire the next police chief here in Pittsburgh, what are 3 questions that you would ask him?
Go back to the mental health. This is Zinna. I'd ask him, how would you deal with the mental health on calls? I would ask him, how are you going to interact with the communities in the city? And I probably would want to know how you are going to deal with the racist police officers. on your staff?
That's 3.
I would ask them to give me an example of a negative encounter they had with a police officer in their life previously and how it shaped their views of policing.
That's 1. You got 2 more, Bethany?
Oh, is this our final word?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I'm going to add 2 things. My 2 things are going to be a call to action. I want yous all to leave here. Thank you for coming, but I want yous all to leave here and go talk to somebody about what you heard here tonight. Go talk to somebody about what you learned on these 2 panels. And remember that you're not going to get everyone by pulling at their heartstrings, because some people don't have them. So I want to give you some numbers to spit out at them. We spend $100 million a year on our Allegheny County Jail alone. It's the single highest line item in our county budget. It should piss you off as much as it pisses me off that 35 cents of every single dollar that we pay in taxes goes towards our jail, towards incarcerating and torturing unconvicted people. It costs $100 per person per day for each person we hold in that jail. That should infuriate you. When you want answers to all these questions, how could we fix this? What is the solution? Man, take a fraction of what you're spending to punish people and invest it in them before they ever get caught up in the system. That's how we prevent crime. It's not more police. It's not more jails. It's not any of the other things that you hear in the news. Crime wave. There's no crime wave. The media is reporting on it more. The way that we solve the problems that you're hearing about, that your neighbors are getting scared about, is we invest that money into our communities, into our people, into our schools, into workforce development training, into the things that we know the data shows decreases crime and keeps people out of jail. Take those numbers to your neighbors and make sure everybody knows what's going on, because it's happening in your backyard under all of our watches, and people don't have a clue.
Proactive. Love it. Love it. Anybody else?
Yeah, no, that was good. I'm good.
Richard, why don't you? I would love to hear you. Are you good? That was in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Really,
thanks,
Bethany, you got me fired up. I'm like, what can I do? Do you guys have anything? Like, is there a list, or is there a website that we can go to? I know that BPEP has a website where we can get into contact, who to vote for, or who to call, what office to lean on, step in. Do we have that kind of resources?
Yins can slide in my DMs, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I got a bunch of emails on the county website, on my website, but really, Jail Oversight Board, it's on YouTube. We fought like hell to get a YouTube channel.
Oh, wow.
All of the information Bethany just said is in the Zoom.
Awesome.
Thank you. The Allegheny County Oversight Board, all the legislation everyone mentioned. So you can check out the Zoom afterwards. It's all in there.
Perfect. First Thursday of every month, 4 p.m., Allegheny County Courthouse. Oh, you're the best, Deja. Thank you.
Thank you, Deja.
This is Brittany. I also want to say that if you ever have a story or you think the media could be doing something better, please tell me. You all are the storytellers. You all are the readers. You know what's going on more than some white lady from D.C. So, well, sort of. Suburb of D.C., we'll say. Family's from D.C., I grew up outside, or whatever. But please let me know.
Thank you. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank the whole audience. I like both panels and all the people on Zoom. This has been a blessing. I wish this were like 5 hours, like we started at like 1 o'clock this afternoon, and we started rolling, and we're still here. What a great place to be. What a great eclectic group of people to come and sit down at the table of brotherhood. Let's continue to sit down, continue to question, continue to get information that the average person, myself, did not know. I actually am leaving here feeling like I just went to a horror story, and my heart is hurting, my feelings are hurt, and I consider myself a very astute person, and knows what's going on around me, and these are some things I just did not know. I just did not. And I don't think the average person in the average community knows it as well. So thank you, Jason, for having this. I hope thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you all for having us.
Oh, no, it's not over. So I know we're running a bit late, But if you would like to stay for the smaller roundtables with our panelists, you're welcome to. Those will be at the back half of the gym. So if you see all of the roundtables, you can feel free to go there. I will first have the panelists go to their tables, so then you can choose which panelists you would like to have smaller discussions with. Thank you, everybody. Please do stay. And whatever questions that are not answered in the roundtable, we will have a Q&A for a few minutes at the very end. One moment. I guess we're staying the night. I'm kidding. Don't stay here. It's cold. So India would like to do a quick mindfulness activity, and then we'll take a few minutes of a break, and you can have a little snack, make your way back to the tables. Panelists, you're also allowed to get water, go to the bathroom, all that good stuff. Thank you, India.
You're welcome, and I promise this will be very, very short because I know people are tired. I worked a full-time job today, and I'm here as well, so I know people are trying to get out of here, but I felt it in my shoulders. I'm sure everybody else felt it in their bodies, just the heaviness of the conversation that we talked about, especially hearing the different stories, so I thought it was important to take space and do some mindfulness. So if everybody would like to join me, you don't have to if you don't want to. But I think it's important to release that energy from our bodies. So if everybody could just take one big deep breath, hunch your shoulders with it, and exhale. This exercise is called the warm heart exercise, and we'll do it very, very quickly. This is the condensed version. I encourage you all to look it up and do it on your own. But I want you to take your hands and put them together if you are able to, and I want you to rub them together. If you do not have the ability to rub your hands together, I encourage you to really just think about the sensation of a warmthness, of friction against your skin. When you are ready and you feel like your hands are warm enough, I want you to take your right hand and place it on your heart. And then I want you to take your left hand and place it on top of your left, or on top of your right hand. And I want you to press into your heart. And I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath. And just think about what that warmness is doing to your body, and how the sensation is helping to release and relax any tension that you may be feeling in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your hips, in your spine, or any other place in your body. Think about other warm moments, being on a beach, receiving a hug from a loved one, that first sunshine after a very long winter. Take a deep breath. And exhale. Thank you.
Thank you. That was cool. That was cool. I like that. I never did that before.
Oh, panelists, stay where you are.
I thought we got
I know. So we're actually going to have just the Q&A session. We're out of time, folks. So if you have a question, please do raise your hands. Panelists, you can feel free to stretch for a second, and then we'll take a few minutes of Q&A. Is everybody good? Y'all ready for Q&A? Oh, no, I was asking if the panelists are ready for questions. I don't have the mics. Yeah, this isn't the long mic. I was going to say, you can come right here.
on Zoom, actually.
Yeah, our ASL interpreters on Zoom can't hear you.
That works.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that I made this evening. I kind of sort of got a question. I kind of sort of got a statement. I don't know what it is, but as I was sitting here and I listened to the first panel, and there's so many things that goes through my mind when you all talk about what it is that we were talking about at the beginning. I asked the question, how does one get past the elephant in the room? Do we ever talk about the black-on-black crime? Do we ever talk about that? Do we ever start right there before we even begin to say, you know, we got more black-on-black crime than we do white-on-black crime? Do we ever begin to say that? I have a 23-year-old boy laying on my couch who got shot in his back. I've been in this room 3 times and I said it. Got attacked because I said this very statement, and I'm going to say it again. What we want while we come here? What is this town hall? This is 25 years. What we come here for? One gentleman, all by himself, showed up at the hospital, Mr. Garland. When do we begin to ask the question in the community? I really and truly don't care about the shortage of police. I don't care if no one's walking a beat. I don't care about all that. When are we going to stop killing our own? Because when I sat in this town hall, 70% of it is white. That ain't the goddamn problem here. Dude, 25 years and we come here, we've accomplished something, but we ain't gained anything. We've accomplished something, but we ain't gained anything. Y'all let that set real. Listen, maybe I'm the devil's advocate. I just want to say this. The jail was made for people to repent. That's in the Bible. The jail was made for people to repent. There's so much I could say and talk about. I'm just sticking to some key points. I'm definitely on that, Bethany. I hear you. A lot of that stuff is wrong. A lot of it is wrong. But when do we ever start saying we're going to start at home? It started at home because it's a big deal at home before they send them out. I hear $100 million. I hear you. At this point, put $300 million in there because it's not happening at home. And it's a daggone shame. It's horrible that they're putting that in there. When do it stop? When are we going to talk about the elephant in the room? Black on black crime is killing. It's serious.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, I was going to say if there was a question for the panel, because we are trying to honor the time of our hosts here at CEA. Bethany would like to respond to that question.
I think I heard a question.
I'll hold your mic because it has to go other places.
Okay. Because I think that was a question, right? That was a question. What do we do? What do we? Yeah. So again, you said you don't $100 million. Don't care if it's $300 million. It's not all of the crime that you're referencing. You can say it starts at home, but what are we doing to make home better? What are we as our government, as our community, doing to make home better, right? Because let's talk about housing insecurity. A lot of people who are in the jail are in there because they're accused of crimes of survival. All right? You know that, right? They need to steal food to put it on the table. They're sex working because it's the best paying job they can get. They're, selling drugs to support their family. Instead of working 3 part-time jobs where they're never home for them, they're selling drugs because they know they can make a better living doing that than making $7.25 an hour working at 3 different places just to get by. In Allegheny County, do you know what the highest demographic of eviction is? People getting kicked out of their homes because they can't afford to live there anymore? Single black mothers. You heard the demographics earlier of Allegheny County. The city's almost 30% black population. Allegheny County is even lower than that, yet yes, our county jail is over 50% black men. It's not just policing. It's not just the prison system. It's all of the other functions of society, the things that are supposed to be the pillars that we don't invest in because the money we got, we're putting into this bullshit. We're putting into the policing who aren't preventing crime, who aren't solving crime, who probably aren't going to help your friend who's laying on your couch. The police aren't going to fix that. What could fix that? Investing in making sure that everybody, no matter where they live, has a better public education, making sure that if they want to, after they finish that public education, they can go on and get job training in a field of their choosing. They can go on to college. They can go on and start their career because we as society provide them the supports to do that. They never have to commit a crime to make sure they can pay their rent because we as society provide that stable housing so that they're not a 15-year-old boy out having to act like an adult because their parents or their single parent by themselves can't do it for them. That is not the fault of the families. That is not the fault of the people who are sitting in jail, the people who are getting involved in this violence. That is not their fault. Society, the concept of society is supporting each other, and we're not doing that. But we have
a lot of money into community organizations that are set up to do exactly what you're saying. Now we can talk about this, and this can go on. We put a lot of money into community organizations for those programs, and that doesn't happen.
Hello. Can I let another panelist respond?
That's the problem.
Because we are out of time, folks. Sorry to be that person.
I have many thoughts, but I think
you.
I will address the last comment about community organizations that are putting a lot of money towards this. I think you could raise valid points. I think everybody can say that you have raised valid points. Not all of us agree with it. I definitely don't agree with black-on-black crime being worse than white-on-white crime. That's statistically inaccurate. But with that being said, I think that there is definitely a problem in black communities and black neighborhoods where crime is not being addressed, and that is the elephant in the room. When we talk about black-on-black crime versus white-on-white crime, we need to undo that narrative. It's not about how we compare to white people. It's about how we compare ourselves to each other. And a lot of times, young black men are out here killing other young black men because nobody has taken the time to instill in them the respect for themselves or the respect for black men just like them. However, I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm not done. Also, on top of that, to your point about community organizations, as somebody who has, since I've been in Pittsburgh, I'm not from Pittsburgh, I'm from Dayton, Ohio. My grandmother worked for the city of Dayton her entire life. I have been birthed and bred to work for community organizations from the time I was 5 years old. And I will tell you that these community organizations are all fighting for the same funding. Yep. They are all fighting for the funding to be utilized the way the community wants it to be utilized and cannot because philanthropic dollars are telling them they have to do X, Y, and Z when the community is telling them they want to do A, B, and C. And that is inherently the problem. There are hundreds. Pittsburgh has some of the highest funding and philanthropic dollars out of any county, city in the United States of America. That is a fact. You can Google that. That is a Googleable fact. We have hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars that go into funding these community organizations. And it's not to say that they're not doing good work, but the way they are funded, there is a lot of red tape that they cannot get past. There are community members, mothers, who are literally pleading for them to do something, and they absolutely cannot because it's not in their grant. And that is inherently a problem. And when we talk about violence in our communities, we cannot talk about it without looking at the inherent timeline of white supremacy and how it makes us view ourselves. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, accountability for people who do bad things to other people. But at the end of the day, when we talk about abolition, we're talking about exactly what you're talking about. Taking ownership within our communities, it's not about more police. It's about being able to actually take ownership and agency. We can't do that through philanthropic dollars. We can't do that through policy change. We can't do that through more police. What we can do, though, is mutual aid funding, which are a lot of times blocked within community organizations. They can't do mutual aid funding. Why? Because it's not within regulations on a federal level, on a state level, on a city level. They can't do that. But you know who is doing that? People like Mr. Richard Garland over there, Deja right here. There are hundreds of people that are in the streets every single day in Pittsburgh doing this work that you're speaking of who don't get recognition and don't ask for recognition. But what they're doing is they are giving that money back. Deja's organization, she doesn't want to be put on the spot, but her organization every Friday raises money, asks everybody in that group to give $5. And every Friday they're raising for a single mother who needs her bills paid. They're raising for a single mother who had to go to the hospital. They're raising for someone who's about to get evicted because the moratorium was lifted. These are things that are happening on the ground in Pittsburgh that people don't realize are happening, and those communities need support. So if we're talking about abolition, if we're talking about reform, if we're talking about black on black crime, what really needs to happen is each and every one of us need to stop looking for these community organizations, these police and these other institutions to do something about it. And we need to look within ourselves and say, you know what? I know a young brother who's 15 years old and who's been suspended 3 times this year. Maybe I should go to his house and knock on his door and say, hey, I know your mom told me you got suspended. How about you come with me for the day? We're going to fix up somebody's house. How about...
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to remind everybody, sorry to talk over you, we are out of time. India.
All right, so
I would like to respect the space and respect the fact that I'm saying we're out of time. So we are out of time. So as we wrap up, we're going to start cleaning the room. I appreciate everyone coming. If you still want to talk to our panelists, you can come up to them and say a few words to them as we wrap up. Richard Garland's investing in my organization. He gave me $5. Tomorrow's Friday. So look out for us. I appreciate you all so much. Our full day summit, we have our keynote on January 20th, 7 p.m. And then we have our full day of about 35 workshops, wellness sessions, and community events on January 21st from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Our website is pittsburghracialjusticesummit.org. You can also reach us at info@pittsburghracialjusticesummit.org, or you can just contact me. I think a lot of you know me, so thank you so much. If you know Tim, you can also contact Tim. I guarantee you he'll forward that email to me. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you to our panelists, our ASL, our volunteers, our staff. I'm not done. Thank you, CEA. Thank you, Rashad Birdsong. Thank you, Miss Amarji, for having us tonight. Let's thank our hosts tonight for letting us stay past our time. All right, good night.